Welcome to a very special Comic-Con at Home manga publishing panel. Today we are talking with our manga publishing pros. It's our industry roundtable. First of all, we have a lot to talk about today, so let me go ahead and let you introduce yourselves. And I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about manga or book that your company is publishing that you would like to let us all know about. So first of all, let's start with Mark.
All right. Hey, how's it going, everybody? I'm Mark, Sales and Marketing Director of Yen Press. I've worked with Yen Press at this point a little over 5 months, but I've worked in the manga industry for close to a decade. So definitely talked to many a retailer, definitely analyzed a lot of manga data, and I'm happy to be part of this roundtable. So one of the titles I wanted to talk about briefly is Toilet Bound Hanako-kun. It's not only our best-selling new series of the year, it's actually one of my personal favorites. It has to do with the school where there are sort of urban legends, there are, ghosts, there's tales like that. And amongst them, one of them is Hanako-kun, which is a ghost in the girls' bathroom in the old school building. And Nene, who is one of our main characters, goes and tries to find Hanako-kun so that he could grant her a wish. And she does meet Hanako-kun, but she also finds out that he is not a girl, like the legend says, but is actually a boy and is quite quirky. And from there, the two of them become friends, and perhaps more than friends. Who knows? And then they run into ghosts and exorcists and whatnot. And to me, this is the closest that I've felt to reading Ranma 1/2 for the first time as a 12-year-old, just the sweet, bits of romance that are there, the fun of these crazy, super powered characters in a high school setting. It's a real treat, and I'm happy that it's doing well. This is another one that I'm really looking forward to. I don't know how to give birth. So this is an example of an essay work, a manga essay work. In terms of that category, for those unfamiliar with the term, think of something along the lines of my lesbian experience with loneliness. It's either typically autobiographical, they address a particular topic. This one, as you can tell from the title, addresses giving birth, and it goes from, this mangaka who, this is her story actually, her autobiographical story, had trouble giving birth, so it goes about the process of her going to the doctor and the doctor giving her uncomfortable, it's part of the process, but for her at that point feels uncomfortable, and going from there, she actually gets pregnant, and from there, how does she deal with this situation? How does she deal with morning sickness? So it's very informative, but additionally, it's really cute and adorable, as a lot of essay works are.
All right, and we are on to Masaaki Shimizu.
Hey, hello everyone. I'm Masaaki Shimizu from Square Enix Manga and Books. Hope you're staying safe and enjoying the Comic-Con at Home events. Let me introduce a few titles from Square Enix Manga and Books. Soul Eater, the Perfect Edition. For those who know this classic shonen series, please pick it up to re-experience and rediscover all the excitements. For those who haven't checked it out yet, this will definitely be a great timing for you to experience the quirky, action-packed adventures of Maka and Soul Eater with this all-new deluxe collector's edition. This one that I'm holding right now is a Japanese edition, but the English edition would be a hardcover with about 300 pages, which is about the length of 1.5 original volumes. The original color pages are all reproduced. Let me show you, like this.
Yeah, I
got it was serialized in a magazine. And the original, with an updated translation and lettering, brand new cover art drawn by creator Atsushi Okubo himself. I wanted to show you this one as well. Wandering Witch has an anime coming soon, and hope everyone picks up and reads the manga too. This is a gorgeous, oversized, full-color art book showcasing the artwork from the massively popular online video game Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers. So it looks like this.
Nice.
Um, it includes an exclusive bonus code for an in-game item, the wind-up Julia Chai minion. So look at her. Can you see this? Look at her
Yep.
hubby under her arm. Isn't that cool?
All right. Let's see. Kevin.
Oh, hi, everybody. Hope everyone's doing well. I'm Kevin Hamric. I'm the VP of Sales for the publishing side of VIZ Media. And coming out this year, we are very happy to be releasing our first book from our new imprint, our VIZ Originals imprint. Fangirl. Everyone probably knows Rainbow Rowell's fantastically selling YA coming of age novel. This is going to be the manga-ized version of Fangirl. We're going to do 4 volumes. This will be volume 1 coming out in October. And for those of you who don't know, this is a very smart, funny, genuine, like I said, a best-selling coming-of-age book. The manga presents Kath, a college freshman, along with her more outgoing identical twin, Ren. While Ren is out making friends and partying, Kath struggles to adjust due to her social anxiety. Most of Kath's free time is spent writing fan fiction. The fan fiction follows the fictional Simon Snow series, and the story is a learning who she is when she's stripped down to just Kath, not the twins Kath and Ren, not Magic Kath, her fan fiction pen name. So like I said, we're very excited that this is the first manga coming from VIZ Originals. This is being adapted by Sam Maggs, who is currently writing Captain Marvel, as well as a YA novel for Marvel. The second title I'd like to talk to you about comes from Junji Ito, who hands down the master of horror manga and is extremely hot right now. This is a story of an astronomer in a Japanese observatory, and one night as he's peering through the telescope, he becomes the first person to witness a planet emerging from a wormhole. He names the planet after his daughter Remina, and both of them become very famous thanks to their unprecedented discovery. It's a spectacular tale of ultimate and unavoidable destruction of humankind, and that happens without any of humanity's own help. It's a solid overview of how people can't cope and their own primitive instincts, even in the face of doom. And of course, the artwork will be Junji Ito's very, very odd, bizarre style.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. Ben.
Hi. Thank you all for coming. I'm Ben Applegate. I'm the Director of Publishing Services at Penguin Random House, but my job focuses on the print program for Kodansha Comics. My first pick this year is Heaven's Design Team, which is actually already out in digital, but we're doing the print version this fall. This is about the creation of the animal kingdom. The concept is that God got a little tired earlier than the seventh day after all, and decided to outsource the creation of the animals to a design agency. And so it's these designers, all of whom have different specialties, who get rather vague specifications from the client, who again is God. And they have to, through trial and error, try to match the specs by creating all of these different animal prototypes. And sometimes they succeed and sometimes they fail, and their failures literally pile up in the corner. Just as an example, they try to make a horse. There's a guy who just loves his like hit was the horse, and so everything he makes is a variation on the horse. And he makes a horse with a really, really long neck, and then we find out that horse would suffocate to death because it couldn't support its very long neck. So it's got all these great little biological details in it, and Anime News Network called it the zoological equivalent of Cells at Work, actually. So every chapter ends with a actual photograph and description of the animals that were profiled in the chapter. It is genuinely very educational and also super adorable, as you can see. And it's getting an anime coming up as well. Number 2 is Wave Listen to Me, which if you've been watching the anime season this season, you might have caught. This is from Hiroaki Samura, but unlike his other work, which is Blade of the Immortal and Die Vergelder, and is generally universally violent, this is a romantic comedy, supposedly. He has sworn in his afterwords to these volumes not to kill anyone, although you'll see he comes very close several times. It's set in Hokkaido, and the main character is a curry shop waitress who is complaining about her man troubles to a guy she meets out drinking. And little does she know that this guy is recording her and is in fact a radio producer, and he ropes her into becoming a DJ, a late night shock jock, essentially. So you can see some of the lines that she says on the cover there, and it's delightful, it's very funny, and the manga is Samura, so the art is brilliant.
All right, Ed.
My name is Ed Chavez. I'm the publisher, editor-in-chief, sales director, translator, letterer at.
Oh, I forgot. I didn't put all your titles on there. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I'm just being humorous right now. We have a couple titles to talk about as well. The first one is Heavenly Delusion by Masakazu Figueroa. A year and a half ago, this was selected as the top manga of the year by manga critics and bookstores in Japan in an anthology called Kono Manga ga Sugoi. So these manga are amazing. Essentially, this tale follows two parallel or potentially parallel universes that seem completely different. In one world, you have a post-apocalyptic Japan that has been destroyed by maybe some big weather phenomena, maybe a big earthquake, maybe aliens have descended upon Far East Asia. And there is very little technology left. Most of mankind is gone. And you see the two characters on this cover roaming through this wasteland in search of a place that they only know as heaven. In the other world, you get to see this idealized school setting. However, you quickly find out that the kids in this school are living in what is essentially an expansive biodome. All of their teachers are robots, and even the few human adults that are there all seem to have some strange connection to science and the technology world, and they want to prevent those kids from going outside of the dome. And then the next title we want to share with you guys is about to drop in a couple of weeks, is The Girl with the Sanpaku Eyes, another series by Square Enix in Japan. And in this case, a very unique title for Denpa, as this is originally a full-color webcomic. Actually, the story about this is a little more deep than that. The series originally debuted on Twitter and became so popular that eventually the artist was scouted and continued the series on Square Enix's Pixiv service. So our edition will be in full color, and it follows the girl with the Sanpaku eyes. So what are Sanpaku eyes? Well, Amane, who is on the cover, has very intense eyes. Huh?
Is it like bitchy resting face or something?
Exactly. I'm not going to say that. I'm glad you did. But yes, it's resting bee face, essentially. And yeah, for the most part, when her classmates, when her siblings see that look on her, everybody cowers in fear. But at the same time, Amane is possibly the cutest soul, the gentlest, softest person you may know. And she's also in love. So how does she overcome those intense eyes, that resting bee face, to fall in love with the class hunk? Super cute.
Your turn, Eric.
So I'm Eric. legally known as the chief of operations of Udon, but I normally consider myself the supreme underling that I have to do everything while everybody is not doing. One of the more unique titles that we put out is Otherworldly Isekai Nobu. This is based on a popular light novel in Japan. Artworks done by Virginia Nitohei, which I have the honor to work with her in our Manga Classics line. She does the Edgar Allan Poe book, and she also did the Dracula book for us. And the difference is, Nobu is one of those, isekai genre books, which you throw something into a different fantasy settings or different world settings, and kind of like the world collides and crazy things happen. But a little bit different than the normal isekai stuff. This book is very grounded and very realistic. You have the premise of this book is you have this Japanese izakaya, which is like a pub. For those who doesn't understand what isekai is, it's basically a Japanese pub. And then one day, their front door miraculously opened up to this ancient world that's kind of resembled old times Germany. So they all of a sudden, these Japanese chef, the Japanese hostess, an associate, like they all of a sudden started having all these ancient German soldiers coming in to try to sample real life Japanese food. So every food that is in this book, it's actually real, not based on, but it actually is a real dish that you can eat, like sashimis, karaages, any Japanese dish that you can find out, normally served in a Japanese pub, like katsu and things like that, and it makes you hungry when you read it because it's real food that you have experienced, and it's a very heartwarming tale of how food brings everybody together. Other than the Udon stuff, I also run Manga Classics, which takes classic literature and adapt it into faithful manga adaptations. One of the new books that's coming out is Anne of Green Gables. I'm very proud of this one because we are the only authorized manga adaptation by the heirs of L.M. Montgomery, the original author. Yes, most of the time, with these public domain titles, you don't really have to go and get their blessings. You can just do it, whatever. But I feel like, as a Canadian myself, Anne of Green Gables is a very treasured Canadian property. I actually went up to them and talked to them about this, and then they saw what we have done in other Manga Classics titles, and then they really like our approach, and then we got a full authorization as the official authorized manga adaptation through the heirs of L.M. Montgomery. And I have been working very closely with the granddaughter of Lucy Montgomery, Miss Kate Butler, to actually make sure that our adaptation is faithful to what her grandmother's visions are.
Okay, great. Okay, Tomo, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Tomo Tran. I'm marketing director for Kodansha Publishing, and I mostly focus on the vertical titles. But as you know, Kodansha vertical is an imprint of Kodansha, so I do look over Kodansha titles as well, along with Ben. So the first one title I wanted to introduce was Weathering with You. I think many fans are familiar with this title as this has a movie adaptation. It's from Makoto Shinkai, as you know, from Your Name. And this story is it's a brand new story from Makoto Shinkai, his latest, and focuses on the main character Hodaka, who you see on the cover, who's from the countryside. He gets tired of high school life and wants to go to the big city, Tokyo, and see what he can do. Unfortunately, he didn't have a plan, so it didn't turn out well, and he's like on the streets trying to get a job, but he can't. He's he's all rustled up. He gets beat up a couple times, and now he smells really bad. So now he's kind of against the wall, and then he meets this girl named Hina. And at first, it's kind of a really non-dramatic meeting. He just meets her in a fast food restaurant where she works at. And then later on, they encounter each other, and he finds out that she can control the weather, hence the title "Weathering with You." And this is kind of their adventures, and how Hodaka grows as a character. Hina, where does she get her powers from, and why does she have the power to change the weather? The movie got really great reviews from New York Times, Washington Post, etc. So Really excited for this one. It's 3 volumes, so easy to pick up. I think it'll be great for teens. The next one, With a Dog and Cat, Every Day is Fun. This one is a little more kind of good for the times. You can get a good laugh with this manga. So essentially, this is a story about living with a dog and a cat together. So if people have experience, with dealing with dogs or dealing with cats or both, this is a great title for you. The author Matsumoto, she just she chronicled her experiences with both of her dogs. You can see the dog on the cover. He looks very cute and like huggable and kind of happy. And look at her cat, looks very angry and sadistic. And so this is kind of like the two worlds of having a dog and a cat. And so this is kind of like many funny stories from her daily life. I think any dog lover or a cat lover can relate to, and pretty fun read.
Right, Dallas.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dallas. I have been working in manga for, God help me, it's been 20 years now. And I am now the co-founder of a new manga app called Mangamo, and I lead the editorial team as the executive editor there. So Mangamo, I should explain briefly, is a all-digital subscription app available on iOS. We launched in April, and we're on track to have about 300 series up as of the first week of July. So we're really excited about what we're doing over there. And one of the series that we're especially excited about is Japan Sinks 2020. So as we're recording this, Japan Sinks is about to air on Netflix in a few weeks. But of course, by the time this runs, it will have already started. And it's a really great series. It's based on a very classic Japanese novel, a disaster novel called Japan Sinks. And it's been adapted into a few different forms. But this one is directed by Masaaki USA. And of course, he's one of my favorite directors. He directed Devilman Crybaby, a lot of great films, and my current all-time favorite anime, Keep Your Hands Off Eizouken. So we are going to have the manga spin-off from this. We're also on the production committee for this anime, so we've been really involved in working on it. And when this debuts, it's going to be coming out on a weekly basis on the Mangamo app as a simulpub with Japan, so it'll be releasing at the same time. As it is suggested in the title, it's pretty much exactly what it says on the label. There's a massive earthquake, and Japan is slowly sinking into the sea. So this is a classic disaster story with more modern storytelling. Everything I've seen about it just looks amazing so far. And just to give you a quick peek, this is what the Mangamo app looks like. As I said, we have about 300 series. And one of the other series that I didn't have a chance to get the info over in time was Loving Yamada at level 999. And this is a great series about a young woman who gets dumped by her boyfriend. She had just started playing an online game as a way to get closer with him. Still kind of obsessed with him. She continues to play the game and starts to get more and more into it. This manga was just recently nominated. I have to look at my notes because I'm not always great with Japanese. It was nominated for the Tsugi ni Kuru Award, which is a Kadokawa award for up-and-coming manga. So I'm really rooting for this one. But it's just one of the great series that we have running on Mangamo.
All right, and we have a special guest calling in from Japan today, Matt Alt.
Hello there. How are you doing? So my name is Matt Alt. I am the co-founder and co-operator of a company called Alt Japan. We have been in the localization business since around the turn of the millennium and active in Japan, in Tokyo, where we work from now since 2003. Our bread and butter is video games, but we also do a lot of work on manga. Most recently, we localized Doraemon in its entirety for Fujiko Productions, which was quite a travail because we're talking tens of thousands of pages, so we had to establish a pipeline of translation and editing to get up to 100 pages edited done a day of translation. and it was a real honor to get this very classic series that hasn't traditionally gotten a lot of attention abroad into English, and it's available on the Kindle platform now. Also, even more recently than that, we localized for VIZ the Dorohedoro series. But today is a very special day for me because it is the publishing day of my new book, which is called Pure Invention: How Japan's Pop Culture Conquered the World. And it is a cultural detective story in which I track down key inventions that truly transformed global fantasies and reality in the process. And it actually emerged from, in part, from my work localizing Japanese content and manga in particular, because over the years, in the very beginning when we started working, it was a translation of manga and all sorts of Japanese content was a sort of anonymous task that was conducted in the shadows. The things that you translated didn't come out for many months or often years after you did them and weren't really greeted with that much of a welcome. But as the years went on, and especially starting in the early 2010s, I noticed that fans were getting more vocal about their translations. They wanted their translations as fast as possible. They wanted them as close to the original as possible. They wanted them as Japanese as possible. And that got me wondering, where was this sort of new fandom coming from? Was it some sort of new wave Japaneseme like that of the 1800s when the Impressionists were obsessed with Japanese culture? But I realized I was asking the wrong question. Because Japanese products didn't hit simply because they were well designed, but because they represented tools for trying times. And as we consumed them, they transformed us and Japanized our tastes in the process. So in a certain sense, America has finally caught up with Japan. We understand the symbology of manga. We understand the culture of manga and so many other Japanese products. And this Japanization of the global fantasy-scape, as you might call it, has had really profound effects, not only on our own pop cultural businesses, but on culture as a whole, even among people who don't have any particular interest in Japan, such as how we saw anime and manga fans trolling on 4chan to kind of upset the direction of the 2016 elections. So the things in this book are more than hits. They're actually things that really affect everybody, and the entire second chapter is devoted to the history of manga, its role in protest in Japan, and its role in kind of supporting youth movements starting in the 60s that we're only just starting to see happening abroad in the last few years, but they're a testament to the vitality of manga and of illustrated entertainment of all kinds in Japan to fitting into a niche that a lot of Western entertainment still struggles to hit.
I think Matt brings up an interesting point, that manga now is no longer something that is just exotic and purely Japanese. Its appeal crosses a lot of types of fans, from people who've never been to Japan, know nothing about Japanese culture, to people who are very deep into it. How has the market changed since the time when you first started selling manga, like publishing manga, for example? Let me ask Kevin, are you noticing any differences in like what fans are like asking for nowadays and are really into nowadays compared to a couple of years ago?
Yeah, it's wider. I would say the subject matter, the genres that we're publishing into is just wider, and it's because it's a wider audience coming into the category. Obviously, horror seems to be one of the top genres that seems to be spiking right now. But it's like you said, it's because manga has come from behind the curtain and is more widely accepted. It's firmly implanted in pop culture, and pop culture is basically running the world right now. So it's more accepted. It's not that thing that your parents told you when we were young not to read, not to look at. It's actually being encouraged for people to read.
So Mark, you mentioned that you're publishing like essay comics and things like that. Yeah. Is that a trend you're seeing?
Oh yeah, I'd say so. And actually, so I mean, what the essay comments, but on a wider scale, I would say the trend that I've seen since I've started working in the manga industry is it's like Kevin said, wider, but specifically, I mean, in the sense of what's doing well. Like, for as long as I've lived, basically, you've had a variety of manga coming out here. You had your shonen manga, you had things that were more along the lines of seinen, covering an array of subject matter. When I first started working, a lot of you would have a lot of sophisticated titles in addition to the mainstream titles. The difference now is that a lot of those titles that aren't the mainstream titles are doing well. I think that just to look at as an example, The Drifting Classroom. That was a series that came out before I worked at VIZ, and I'll tell you right now, just looking at all the metrics, it's doing much better now. And I think a big part of that is that there are these new fans who have come into manga. You have people who might have not been, open to reading manga a decade ago, and now they're like, I'm a horror fan. I just want to read a good horror book, whether it's a regular graphic novel or it's a manga. For the longest time, people would talk about how slice of life was not a best-selling category, and now here we are. There's a lot of notable bestsellers that are slice of life manga. So as somebody who's a big manga fan, I'm happy to see that it's not just the mainstream hits that are based off the new Shonen Jump anime that are big bestsellers, but rather we're seeing a wide array of the manga that's out there being popular with a bigger audience.
I know, Ed, I know Denpa does a lot of really interesting things about exploring different genres, or like some titles that aren't considered like surefire hits. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, just to work off of what has been said so far, Denpa's titles, not all of them are mainstream. A lot of them are actually closer towards indie works in Japan. And we've been seeing relatively good numbers, despite the fact that, we're not even 2 years old in regards to publishing. Works like Pampagna's Invitation from a Crab, which even in Japan is considered an indie work, is our third best-selling property. Our second best-selling property is Shintaro Kago's Superdimensional Love Gun, which is a very indie property. A number of the chapters in that were self-published, and that's already on its way to its third printing in a year, which is, to us, like, amazing. And then even classical works with art that's not conventional, like Fukumoto's Kaiji, Gambling Apocalypse, a work that is a multi-million unit seller in Japan that has had movies even adapted to the West and multiple TV series, but because the designs are not in line with what we normally see from popular titles in the West, it has been something that's kind of been on the back burner for other publishers. And for us, we launched with 6,000 units of that and have already gone through that in less than half a year. So it's really interesting to see that audience really broaden and become a lot more stable than it was, even when I was at Vertical 10 years ago. We were trying a number of those things back then, and it took time. It took a lot of time. And I'm glad to see they're doing well, and I'm glad to see other publishers like Seven Seas and Yen and obviously us trying these different types of genres, trying these different types of looks, and having them be successful and not necessarily just focus on your pretty shonen titles that have anime connections.
I know, Dallas, you were mentioning that you've seen a lot of this evolution over the years. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Sure.
What you're noticing?
But first, I just want to comment. I loved the tone of contempt in your voice, Ed, for those pretty shonen titles.
I mean, there is content there, and I can go on about that, but it is what we see in stores, right? And for a real long time, I can say I have had these convos with a number of you. The focus of what people were licensing, or the focus on what people had expectations, were those pretty titles, whether they were shonen or shoujo or whatever. And it's cool to see a kaiji just so grimy do well, or it's cool to see a Pampania that doesn't look like anything that's like in the manga realm do well with manga fans as well as indie comic fans in the West.
One of the things that I'm very aware of, having worked in traditional print publishing for a long time, until more recently, is, and everybody here on the panel knows this, is that the difficulty in acquiring manga from Japan is that you can end up inadvertently committed to a series that could end up going for 10, 20, or 30 volumes. And so if it isn't a success here, initially, it can be very challenging. It can be a money loser. And first, I just want to echo the comments that I'm hearing, and I agree with this. I think we're seeing a much wider range of series and different types of genres and different types of categories that are doing well. One of the cool things that I'm enjoying about working at Mangamo is that our economics are totally different. We don't have to think about the cost to print a book. And so what that means is that we're able to have a really wide selection of series. Like, take Loving Yamada, which I know I'm beating a dead horse here, but I do like that series, but I wouldn't necessarily have pegged it to be one of our better performers. Well, it turns out it is, and that was even before the award was announced, which was just a day or two ago. Or another series that we have called I Want to Be Your Girl, which actually speaks very articulately and eloquently to trans issues among high school students in Japan. The great thing is we've all known we've all been in this business for a while. There's so much amazing content in Japan, and more the audience for all of it, really all of it, not just the big shonen series, which are still the big money makers. Make no mistake, that's the case for us as well. But it's really gratifying to see how many more types of books people are willing to pick up and check out.
I think, Ben, you want to chime in on something?
Oh, sure. So I think what Ed said is absolutely right. And it's not the issue that there wasn't a variety of licenses being made in the past. I mean, some of the series that VIZ licensed, even back in the 90s, were not pretty shonen. Thank you, Dallas, for your complete set of Eagle, for leaving that for me when you left New York, by the way. I'm always eternally grateful for that. But it's the people, the audience is there. And I'm glad that, Dallas, that you mentioned LGBTQ issues, because there's been this explosion of manga. That's a genuine thing that mostly didn't really exist even to be licensed, and now it does. And Yen has got a bunch of them that are great. And I mean, even shoujo manga or shonen romance series have LGBTQ representation. And of course, Rose of Versailles is out in English. But stuff like O Maidens in Your Savage Season and Ten Dance, which was a sort of BL title that we put out at the beginning of the year, but also is just a great depiction of not just gay characters, but also multiracial characters. That has been really heartening to watch, and to watch the audience really be there for that content is really cool.
I agree. I think it's really interesting because before BL, for example, was kind of like this side room, like people had their dedicated BL areas, BL imprints, and so on. And now I'm seeing like every publisher pick up some BL. Like I know Square Enix has a BL title, right?
Yes, Masa is holding it up right now.
and of course, Viz has Sublime, which is doing well as well.
I think in general, manga has become more accepted form of entertainment than before. Manga is just a thing. Manga is beforehand. When you talk about manga, then you're talking about these Shonen Jump stuff. But nowadays, we understand manga and anime are more than that. We know the new generation of readers just take manga as a form of entertainment rather than a stigma of it.
We are truly a category.
Yeah.
If I might,
Within the category, we've got genres.
I'm still waiting for sports manga to take off. Like, I mean, Haikyuu is doing well. My daughter is in love with Haikyuu. She have watched the 3 seasons over 3 times already. It's crazy. But then the thing is, I think I was like, like there's so many sports manga when I grew up as a kid, like Captain Tsubasa's, Slam Dunk, all those kind of things. And I'm waiting for that. It's like, can we actually bring that to America, or the sports fan just don't like to read manga? I don't know
I
yet.
wonder, I'm hoping that now that there's no actual sports being played, that people will start liking sports manga. Maybe.
Yeah,
I don't
our
know.
Haikyuu sales have picked up during the pandemic.
Really?
Yeah, I'm
Interesting.
stoked.
Wow.
I love. I mean, it's
I
the
think
hype
manga
is on
sales have
Netflix
picked up
too,
across
right?
the board,
Oh
actually.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
not just any genre.
Oh yeah,
They've really picked up. My agent was telling me that they had an emergency meeting a couple of weeks ago to try to figure out, how they can help their authors, and it came out during the meeting. And my agency is not they have nothing to do with Japan specifically. It's an established American literary representative agency, and they, I got a call from my agent afterwards saying, oh my God, manga is the only bright spot out there. Everything else is kind of down across the board. So it's obviously reaching a broader audience, and I think it's actually partially due to manga being, a vibrant medium, but also, kind of like what I was talking about before. We live in a world where, young adults and full-grown adults are watching, movies based on comic books and things like that, and so the bar has really been lowered for the, getting into illustrated entertainment as a form of entertainment. But there's not a lot of Western stuff to fill that gap, and the Japanese manga does a great job of doing that in all sorts of genres that you just don't see in the West because it's been developing for so long. So that's a really interesting cultural, kind of global cultural aspect of it.
Yeah, I
but
want
I'm
to.
also wondering if it could be also the binge effect. Like you can
Sure.
binge Netflix. You
Yeah,
can pick up a
exactly. The
series
binge
of 10,
effect.
12, 13 volumes and just binge for a weekend.
But with manga, it's not just manga and anime, it's also manga and games. Like, for example, Square Enix is a game
Mhm.
company and has a lot of manga that ties into game content. Isekai worlds are very much tied into game content. So, Masaki, are you like as you and Dallas and Mangamo are basically newcomers to to the world of selling manga in North America? How is this? I mean, obviously, this is a really interesting time to start a new business, isn't it? Can you tell me a little bit more
Right.
about how you guys are
Honestly,
adapting?
I have no clue what's happening here. I mean, Square Enix and manga and books did not have any books before February this year, and now we forced into this craziness. And for our situation, as we started publishing our first title in February this year with A Man and His Cat, um,
Hmm.
and High School Girl, we thought, yay, this is great. But now, what is going on? Like you guys said, joking aside, as an overall manga market sales figures, we saw like significant downfall for the April. Like, we're talking about 40 to 50% decrease over the same period last year in April. But then again, we are now seeing an improvement of that number coming back and to the level where we left off before the pandemic. So yeah, it's quite amazing to see, and it's a resilient market. U.S. manga market is, and but I'm not 100% sure whether that trend as a whole manga market is consistent or not for backlist title versus frontlist titles or new releases. So because with what we have, we're still suffering, and I don't know what's going on. So Dallas is my book scan mentor, so maybe Dallas, if you have more
Hey, mine too. How about
insight,
that?
for us.
Well, I mean, I can't speak to BookScan as much. I did finally get my access back a couple of months ago, though, and
Oh yeah.
God, I went about a year without BookScan access, and it was driving me insane. But Mangamo, of course, we're operating under a completely different paradigm, and I want to choose my words very carefully because I don't want to spin this. I'm not trying to spin this like it's a positive, but clearly, even sorry about the noise, even something as devastating as COVID-19. I mean, look, the end result of it is people stay at home more, and we're an app. We're not impacted by retail storefronts being open, and if anything, we get more people coming to us because they're looking for things to do at home. What I can speak to more generally is just that, I did a white paper last year on the North American manga market, and so I keep really close tabs on how things are doing. And I'm really gratified and excited to hear that everybody's sharing that their numbers are up, or at least not majorly down, except for you, Masa. I'm sorry. But the interest in manga is just only getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So many anime are coming to the U.S. now through Crunchyroll and Funimation and other platforms. Netflix, of course, but the largest bulk of it coming from Crunchyroll and Funimation. And all of this just is this fantastic feeder system into manga. People want to read this stuff. They will go to great lengths to find it and to seek it out. And so it's incumbent on all of us to just make it as widely available and as easy to access to them as we can.
Mark, you want to add something here?
I just wanted to go off of what Masa was saying because, as we're recording this in July or June of 2020, we are still in the COVID-19 pandemic, and what Masa says is true, not just for manga, but for publishing. I mean, we're at a time now where for months, nearly every bookstore in this country was closed. They couldn't operate for business in a conventional way. And even, a lot of those readers would go to Amazon. But for months, Amazon was deprioritizing books. So while I acknowledge that some of us here might have seen an increase in sales for a period of time, for much of the few months of pandemic we had, it was gutted. The publishing industry was gutted. I think some of us here, their books are distributed by Diamond book distributors. Diamond wasn't shipping books for a short amount of time. So undoubtedly, as we're recording this in 2020, things were pretty rough, and things are looking good now, and that is a positive. I suppose the final thought on this subject in particular. One positive that we saw at Yen was an increase in digital sales. It is nice to know that in a time where it was difficult for a lot of fans to buy print manga legitimately, they did turn to another legitimate source in digital publishing. This is something that we saw trending for a bit, so it's hard to say with 100% certainty that this is all because of the COVID-19 shutdowns, but I'm gonna put the bet out there that a large portion of it was because of those fans who couldn't get print books and they turned to digital.
I can say one thing though. I want to share a number. The manga classics books, beforehand, the digital sales and everything is going like really so-so. But then the last 3 months, from March, April, and May, we see a 10 times surge with manga classics digital sales through the libraries and school channels versus from before. Like we actually made as much revenue in these 3 months as the whole lifetime of manga classics that has been published. So, yeah, I'm serious. We have been trying to convince the libraries and schools, you should try to do some of these titles digitally or something. So we got some success, but then not exploding success. But then all of a sudden, the last 3 months, our revenue goes like 10, 15 times than the previous months, which is like crazy. I'm waiting for sales in June to see what exactly is going on. I hope it keeps going, but then I don't know. Digital sales is definitely on the up because of a pandemic issue. Whether it's going to sustain
your manga
or not.
classics, for example, are great for school from home. Like homeschooling.
Yeah.
I think it's great content for that. Ben, you want to say something?
Yeah, just a couple more things on the pandemic while we're on this topic. I mean, the picture has been really different for different categories. And I know we're talking about manga right now, and the picture for manga and graphic novels is related. But during the pandemic, there were categories that were up in print. Children's books saw a
Children's books,
huge positive
I was doing
in
reporting
print
on
because
that.
people needed them to entertain their kids who were stuck at home. Cookbooks were up and down, but there was a period when they were up. And the period where everything was down in print really did last a very short period of time. I mean, it was maybe 4 weeks that the biggest doldrums were in effect and everything was down. In manga, like people were saying, roughly 50%. Sales came up before the bookstores reopened, which says to me that people are getting their books in other ways. Maybe some folks who used to shop at bookstores were going online. And the last thing I want to say on this is Masaaki mentioned like a major keyword, which is backlist and frontlist. Backlist sales were much, much better during the pandemic, are much, much better during the
Totally
pandemic.
agree.
New books have had a lot of trouble breaking through, and this is a trend that we've seen happen as more sales go online. It gets harder for people to connect with new series, new authors, particularly series that don't have an anime tie-in or that might not be as visible. And this is a problem not just manga publishers are facing, but all publishers as more sales move online. So, but I mean, it's particularly acute if a series maybe doesn't have an anime tie-in. So if there's something you want to do to really help in this time, maybe think about checking out a new series from a debut author that doesn't have an anime that you've heard really good things about, and tell your friends if you like it.
Ed, do you want to chime in with one last thing?
Yeah. It was like a couple topics. So Ben's last point about backlist and frontlist, we've been seeing the same thing. For us, we tried to launch a couple of new properties in the spring, usually with the intention to have volume 2s by Anime Expo and San Diego Comic-Con. We tried with two, and I have to say their numbers are down 50% from what we expected, or even relative to what we would normally do. And while we are seeing some modest gains in regards to ebooks, and in some cases maybe a tripling of what we normally do, maybe a little bit more, the numbers relative to that wholesale load, that big shipment that goes out to bookstores, those a la carte transactions for ebooks are not necessarily catching up. At the same time, I do find it pretty interesting that we are seeing these stores come back and come back relatively quickly. And what I'm noticing, at least on my side, is it's pretty cool that I'm starting to see things from the EU market, from Canada, from Australia on top of that.
Wow.
Picking up a lot of that slack, particularly in these last 2 months or so. Yes, it's nice to see Barnes & Noble and retailers domestically open up, but at least on our side, having some more of a global accessibility in regards to distribution and our contracts has kept us afloat a little better than I thought. I thought would have been the case maybe in March or April.
Okay, Tomo, you want to add something?
Yes, just bouncing off what Ben and also Ed talked about, and Ed's probably really familiar, but during these times, a lot of our backlist titles like cooking, craft books, and coloring books, those saw a really huge spike, especially like kids' book, Cheese.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm sure Chi did well.
Home. Ed is super familiar with that title. So yeah, I think as you know, even from just from personal experience, a lot of parents are just like, oh, what am I gonna do at home with my kids? We gotta give them like stuff to do and keep them busy. So I think there's a trend toward publishing for younger kids as well. I know Kodansha's publishing some kids related stuff, and so yeah, I think maybe down the line, we'll see more of that.
We're going to have to wrap things up, so I want to ask you all to give maybe like a one-sentence closing remark.
First of all, thanks for having me. Stay home, stay safe, read manga.
I just want to say that I think it's more important than ever the role that manga plays in bringing people closer together, bringing cultures closer together, and it's every day an honor to be a part of that. And the thing I miss most this year because of the pandemic is missing out on the chance to get to meet the readers of Kodansha Comics books. It is a hugely recharging and positive experience for me to get to meet the folks who actually pick up our books every year, and I'm really going to miss that. But I hope you enjoyed the panel, and thank you for watching.
All right, Dallas, go ahead.
I recognize that we all face challenges in the current market, but I'm just so gratified and happy to hear that there are areas where things are, looking up, even in this really, really dark time. And everybody just keep up the good work. Thank you.
It's interesting that I'm coming right after Dallas as I say this. For our industry and graphic novels in general, you're going to see a lot of interesting things happen with digital. I predict that in the next couple of years, there's going to be a lot more players. I actually know of some, and I'm curious about the ones that I don't know of. So it's going to be interesting. We didn't even go into digital, talking about how big line webtoon has been for comics in this past year. Or
I could probably talk with you guys for 2 hours, honestly.
but anyway, there's a lot that's going to happen in digital. But for those of you watching who worry about the future of print, I tell you, don't worry. As long as there's passionate fans like you and as like everybody here in the panel, it's going to be around. I anticipate it being around for my entire lifetime and beyond. So thank you for your support.
Although it's been challenging for everyone, I'm tremendously grateful for being a part of this publishing industry, and to think that I'm contributing to light up people's everyday lives by publishing manga and books. So hang in there.
The world right now may seem very zawa, but we got to take it very much like Kaiji Ito. One step at a time, one battle at a time. Keep on working, keep on thriving, keep on surviving.
So here's the thing. If it's something that you're interested in, that you found out that you want to try it out, because, you never know if you got hooked on something because you don't try. And we need you to try in order for us to keep bringing in more interesting books. So, do try it out. You see all the books that we recommend here. I recommend another one, Extravaganza, which is really cool. So go and try out books and then, and be entertained.
Everyone kind of really wrapped it up, but I wanted just to end with a personal story. I talked about Chi's Sweet Home, and I think a few weeks ago, I gave a copy of Chi's Sweet Home to one of my neighbors who has a 5-year-old daughter, and I gave it. I was like, I'm not reading it anymore, so here you go. Hope you enjoy it. Your daughter enjoys it. And then a few days later, my neighbor texts me. He's like, oh, she loves this book so much. Like, thank you for, so much for giving this to me. And, that's kind of really, for me, I was really happy to be working in the publishing industry and really be able to touch, different lives with books we publish and, being able to work with everyone on this panel, like in some sort of way, being able to interact with them. And then also, thanks to the fans who keep buying our books, the manga industry and supporting the manga industry. So thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. And I really appreciate you taking the time. And please stay safe and go manga. Thank you.
Go manga.
Thanks, Deb.
Go manga.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay healthy.